Welcome. This was a slideshow that was presented as a kickoff meeting for a general contractor and subcontractors responsible for building enclosures. So imagine yourself in a decade or so when you are too tired to walk a construction site anymore, and your wife is perhaps too tired of the big city up north and wants to move closer to her parents who live someplace south. Well, in a place like that, there would be seldom any construction going on, and you would probably be looking to get a position of a resident engineer in a plant management and facility maintenance, where you can apply the skills you gained here. You would get your own budget to replace burned light bulbs, repaint the parking stripes, sweep the floors, and pay for utilities. If you are lucky, you would get a portfolio of some old buildings. But if your karma ran out and you offended some gods, you would get a new building, and worst of all would be if you get a brand new LEED certified building. In such new buildings, two things would often become a nightmare: mechanical systems and building enclosures, which is the reason why building commissioning was standardized into these two areas to bridge reality with expectations. And that's what I do. I just came from the other side, representing your future reincarnation. That's the story of this guy in orange vest. My goal is to make building meet or exceed performance objectives set by the owner. We need you to tell us how you're gonna meet them, show us, meet them, and prove that you met them. Here on the screen you see the spec sections that are affected by our scope. Starting in the design development stage, we were already engaged to review the architectural drawings and specifications. And it could be fair to say that we already lost this battle. For example, 4-inch diameter plumbing that bypasses the flood barrier at the ground level by connecting drains located inside to those located outside the building. Similar lack of coordination would be typically seen between structural and architectural drawings where there are waterproofing and water stops, like for example below grade and at the flood barriers. Almost universally we would see insufficient thermal insulation, unrealistic attachments, excessive bridging and so on, which would normally require giving the insulation some space in early design. That seldom happens in time, and therefore the later stages of design, submittals and construction are characterized by attempts at falsifications and obfuscation, ending with failures which proof are typically responded with denial. There is a fairly comprehensive list of performance aspects that we are concerned about. And this, in short, is the trajectory taken by the average project. And there are always voices of indignation when I present those slides at the meetings, yet somehow they become self-fulfilling prophecy. I believe in highlighting the system's loopholes and weaknesses may help us put them in focus and avoid them. And we appreciate good intentions, but there is seldom anything more than them. It's actions that generally speak for themselves. Obviously, since we haven't started the construction yet, there is some time and space for improvement. This is the typical non-conformance report. It shows certain components, including location, the description of the observation, description of why we are bringing it up, and perhaps sometimes even recommendation. This wall failed for a very trivial reason, just lack of flashing, which would be very easy to add as a change order even if it was forgotten through the design and submittal stages. Let's walk through our scope. It starts in the division 1 with a description of our mutual relationship, which basically could be defined as interchange of information. Then we go through the flood and waterproofing issues, roofing. Of course, there is thermal insulation and generally energy conservation, then walls and openings, including all kinds of glazing, as well as openings that contain louvers and doors and similar items. We begin with the Submetal review, and it starts with verification of coordination. There is only one contractor on this job, and if we see something marked as not in scope, that obviously seems to be uncoordinated. In all our reviews, we use the risk assessment matrix, and you would not generally hear from us if it's below medium. An example: heavily thermally breached, leaky and uncoordinated louvers. They were flagged for non-conformance with the Division 8 specification, which actually comes with an umbrella of the general building enclosure specification, also in Division 8. Other criteria that you could see are the owner's performance requirements defined at the beginning of the project, minimum code requirements, industry standards, and similar criteria that we can actually show you in writing. Otherwise, we wouldn't mention it. Before construction, we expect to get invited by you to certain laboratory mock-up tests. This picture shows one of the pages of the building enclosure commissioning plan. That's the document prepared specifically for this project and distributed prior to this meeting. You should be able to bring it up on your screen. In this packet, you would also see building enclosure commissioning checklists. Those are the key take-off points from the average checklist. What's unusual here is that it starts with the RFI because you are already starting with the handicap of the non-conforming design, and you are supposed to go back to the design and engineering team to ask them questions, with the benefit of being able to see our comments on their design. In the commissioning plan, you will see the key events that we expect to be invited and see. An observation report is the typical product of our work. In the base form, it would include the description, location, observation, and conclusions. If you are lucky, the owner may also pay for our recommendations. Under the observation would list mysterious numbers and symbols, which are actual references to the specifications, standards, and codes. Our primary measuring stick in the construction site are the submetals. In the optimistic scenario that the submetals actually preceded the construction, and we were properly notified about the upcoming key event, we would come, snap some pictures, shoot some video, and write a report. If we see anything that does not meet the criteria and is above or at the medium level of the risk assessment scale, we would mark it up as a non-conformance. If you fixed it before we left, there is nothing to write about. Otherwise, there is some paperwork. We need to see each marked location, each base of non-conformance addressed with photographs that allow a reasonable man to determine whether the condition was fixed or not. If you disagree, we love to be proved wrong. This here is a very good example of a subcontractor successfully defending their position. If you've proved me wrong, you would get a bottle of beer or wine, your choice, as a gift from me, because thanks to you I learned something. Description of the location places the item of interest within the three-dimensional grid, including the building, its level, and the relationship to the construction grid. Also, there often would be an establishing photo of the area, helping to place the close-up photo of the detail. In some cases, we would be asked to mark those items in a field, and almost always there would be a minder or an escort from the general contractor. So location should be pretty obvious. However, the lack of clarity in describing location is the number one response we get to our NCRs. Strangely enough, everything that we point out in the field turns out to be a condition in progress, even if it's years after the building was already turned over. However, if there is concealment by other work, or there is a rework required to repair it, or it was done wrong from scratch, we assume it's been finished, and it's therefore a fair game for our report. As a prerequisite, in accordance to the Division 1 and the commissioning plan, we expect to see certain information from you. I don't have any authority to direct you. I cannot redesign it, I cannot stop the work, etc. Dissecting different building enclosure jobs that went wrong in preparation to lawsuits, often assisting contractors, I discovered that building enclosure consultants' recommendations were very often wrong. And there is a very good reason for that. This job incentivizes a consultant or agent to avoid the risk. We suffer no consequences of our recommendations. And also, the typical job site is served by an individual at the bottom of the career ladder. He or she still could be spared to waste gigantic stretches of their time in the field, waiting for access, waiting for hoists to become available, arguing with contractors about being allowed to take photos of their work. This job comes with no education requirements, simply because there is none to be obtained in the United States, and what follows is there is no certification nor licensure to protect the general public against the charlatans, apart from some private initiatives. There is simply shortage of good people to be had. You may have noticed on one of the previous slides, the guy whom we sent on your job site was instructed how to take photos and how to establish and mark their locations on a building plan. If you ask him for the recommendations, your results may vary. So don't ask him. I am unbiased. I don't work for material manufacturers, and I won't let you pay for my lunch, because it's as important to appear unbiased as it is to be actually objective. Your safety instructors would keep repeating that safety is everybody's issue. This is not true. If I report a single safety issue on your job, I would become liable for all of them. Therefore, I am contractually blind to anything safety related. A construction project is always presented as a team effort. We are all in it together. However, actions speak louder than voice. In my experience, nothing upsets a contractor as much as taking a photograph of their work. And the commissioning effort suddenly becomes a game played to prevent it. You own this job site, and therefore you can always deny my access. I've seen it happen many times under miscellaneous excuses. Either there were no insurance paperwork, or union requirements only allow the operator to go up not more than 6 feet. On a recent job, we were required to provide at least 1 month of a prior notice. When it didn't work, the requirement switched the other way around. We were required to give maximum 24-hour notice. I was physically escorted outside the job site because I didn't have scaffold safety training certificate that was allegedly required for me to walk up and down the stair tower. That strangely happened just after I requested to see submetals of a brand new roof that was constructed in front of me. Coincidentally, those submetals were only presented and approved much later. And as far as I know, nobody else was required to show such a certificate, most likely because such a requirement didn't exist under this jurisdiction. There are many more excuses that I've seen to prevent my access, as well as simple bans like this one. Here the stated reason is because it's not open to all the parties, in contravention of the specification that clearly states the pretesting is supposed to be witnessed by the owner's representative, and only under such condition the pretesting is allowed at all. When nothing else works and I keep coming back taking pictures, this is what an indefinite construction site ban looks like. The excuse was that I entered the factory without permission of the staff, without face mask, and without signing the required non-disclosure agreement. In fact, it was a small automotive repair station with multiple gates open, without any posted requirements, in a small town in Wisconsin with friendly workers, obviously unmasked because it was before the state of Wisconsin imposed any requirements for face mask. They simply invited me inside. And it must be a pure coincidence that only weeks earlier I listed non-conformances in amount of almost $100 million on this particular job. So let me summarize. My job is to protect this guy in orange vest, your future reincarnation, you may say. He got hired on a brand new building, and with the budget that barely allows him to pay utility bills and sweep the floor, so to speak, he's supposed to fix it because it was built wrong from scratch. Where is he supposed to get those hundreds of millions of dollars it would require to fix? Well, he blamed me because I was there at the time where it could be prevented. The process seems to be very simple. There are simple rules established, which we just discussed. The job is generally defined by the competencies of the three participating parties: the owner, the architect, and the contractor. In my experience, you need at least two of them to be good in order for a project to be a success. Working for all these parties in the past, I could understand their limitations. An architect is seldom schooled in building sciences, seldom in technology, and the entire profession promotes right-brained designers. A contractor is in a peculiar position, received inferior documentation, short of any competent workers, and won the job by underbidding competitors. In those circumstances, it's a tall order to meet the performance requirements set by the owner. Good luck. Thank you for watching. This was a seminar based on the typical kickoff meeting for Building Enclosure commissioning. Building Enclosure Institute is a non-for-profit organization. We live off donations. If you like this program, please donate on our website.